Joining us now on this, and then we'll hit the Saudi issue too, our very good friend Stephen Yates, who is an expert on this, having previously advised White House administrations. He's a senior fellow at America First Policy Institute and chair of the China Policy Initiative. So, Stephen, well, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much. Kicking off the Commie Fest, their 20th. I like how they do all of this theater to make it look very democratic, but it's not. It was just the tyrant getting up, kind of trying to brag about what they're doing, sort of create some headlines for their state-run press. What did you take away from this? What should we really be watching from this address?
Well, there's the part of me that has been almost a lifelong watcher of Chinese politics. And in that sense, this was arguably Xi Jinping's most important speech of his life. He was clearly breaking precedent with whatever rules commies follow. And my sense is the only rule they follow is what they can get away with. And so he was breaking precedent to extend a term of office. He will get that. But you'd think with all this time and prep and support, he'd give one razzle dazzle, kick him in the pants kind of speech where everyone walks up, gives their magic commie salute, and off they go. He gave a 2-hour long snore fest that they had to edit out sounds of him breaking to cough. He wasn't exactly delivering it with gusto. And so to the Chinese audience, of course, they're not allowed to have any kind of critical response. They don't have an after action panel that will pick apart the way someone does to a State of the Union here in the United States. But he got what he wanted. He got what he said he was going to do. And even the language on Taiwan, it is only a slight dialing up of things they've already said. I mean, they said they will not renounce the use of force. And they would rather have a one country, two systems kind of an approach that was given to Hong Kong. Sort of leave aside that they trashed that. So I think we basically had a weekend of non-events other than this guy clearly has consolidated power. He is not our friend. And any leader in the world, especially in the United States, shouldn't enter into a conversation of China policy without answering the question, is China a friend or foe? And if they say anything other than foe, move to the next candidate.
You and I talked about, I think this is maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. I think that we were coming right out of lockdown and things were kind of opening up when all of this was happening. But there had been a little bit of power jockeying that was happening within the factions of the Communist Party. And there were some questions as to whether Xi Jinping would come out on top. There was this headline from a couple of weeks ago that turned out to not be accurate about a coup that was taking place. Something apparently did happen, but they're apparently wasn't what India Times was reporting. So I guess my question is, from this sort of power struggle within the factions of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping came out on top.
In spades. And the Chinese politics, the Communist Party politics are one of the biggest black boxes in the world. What we don't know far exceeds what we do know. So all you can do is watch what happens and how they act and make your best estimates on how to react or to push your own interests regardless. Basically, I have no question that there are people who disagree with Xi. Some of them are now dead. I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And some of them are in jail, and that speaks for itself. And so there's no question that there are some areas of resistance. The people didn't like these long lockdowns, but they aren't organized to change government policy. The COVID-0 policy basically remains intact. His approach to Taiwan remains largely intact. His leaning towards Russia really wasn't curbed in any meaningful way.
Right.
And characterizing the United States in non-friendly terms pretty much is what we had going in.
Last week, we're talking with Stephen Yates. We discussed how China is pursuing dissidents in different countries, including here, even in the United States, which is insane that this is allowed to happen. But this headline coming out of Axios, Lachlan Marquet wrote this piece. The DOJ's required lobbyists for Hikvision, a leading Chinese surveillance equipment company, to register as foreign agents. They said that this is part of a broader federal crackdown on Chinese industries that they think might be potential national security threats. Part of me thinks, okay, this is a great step in the right direction. Maybe this is the administration kind of cracking down a little bit. But at the same time, I look at For instance, how much land, how much, natural resource that the United States has allowed China to acquire. And I think, is it though? I mean, are we really, or is it just optical? I wanted to kind of get your insight into this.
Well, my sense is the American people have made up their mind and they're waiting for their government to reflect where they are. And I don't think there's any critical mass of Americans that would say, after having our country and the world poisoned by a government that let a virus out and lied about it, shaved who knows how many trillions of dollars in wealth away from the United States, stunted the academic development of a generation of Americans, partly due to the idiotic policies that the Americans adopted, but it was in response to what the Chinese did and lied about, the unfair trade practices. I mean, my colleague, Bob Lighthizer at America First Policy Institute has a concept called strategic decoupling that I think is the way forward. And you begin with, if there's anything of strategic value that you can't afford for an adversary to control, you need to begin moving that yesterday away from China. And so all of this high-tech stuff that's going on now, we're in the first throes of a hostile divorce. And that, I think, is going to have some bumps along the way. But the momentum is very clearly into safe-shoring that.
Yeah, it's good to see at least we should have been taking these steps quite some time ago. I want to switch gears, ask you, since we're getting ready to come up on another summit. It's been reported that the president has no plans to meet with Saudi's crown prince at next month's G20 in Indonesia. This, of course, after OPEC Plus cutting oil production, and this continues to reverberate. There's not really anything that I think that if he did meet with him, it would look horrible. It would look like he would be begging at this point. I don't think there's anything that he can do to save face here. But I interpret this as Saudi punishment of United States and its allies because this administration was trying to cozy up to Iran. Does that seem like a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we're sort of several layers of analysis into what the core problem is the American leaders doing bad things to American policy that put us in these bad situations. You dial back to energy independence, we have a different dialogue with the broader Middle East. You keep full square on to the Abraham Accords and balancing against Iran. You don't play Iran Deal 2.0. We've got a different Middle East. You don't try to sell this Green New Deal on steroids around the world as the number one challenge and expect to have the same reaction in the Middle East. And you don't go drumming into war with Russia unprepared behind the eight ball and expect any major powers, whether they're friend or not, to be completely comfortable just saddling on up with us. And so, I mean, at this point, I've always been against the G groups. And the larger the number that comes after the G, the bigger waste of time it is. And so I don't know that any president should be going to a G20. That's about 19 too many.
Yeah.
But if you look at this one, I mean, the Saudis are far from the only power that is bad optics for Joe Biden. He's going to go meet with Xi Jinping to talk about what? Going to meet with Putin to talk about what? Going to sit down with Modi of India to talk about what? They have nothing moving forward. And if all they're going to do is go to Indonesia to have a gab fest, well, guess what? Indonesia sells a lot of coal and oil. And so I don't know if they're going to have the same sort of kumbaya welcome ceremony they imagine going to a gab fest. But none of this is good for Biden.
None of it. And that right there, I think that's to talk about what? I think that what you just said, that's what so many Americans identify with. Always love getting your perspective. Stephen Yates, find him on Twitter at YatesComms. Always great insight. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
Of course. You too.